you want to get the live stream going. Thank you very much.
Is he going to give us a signal?
Yeah.
Okay.
And would you like my video on or off?
I think if you could leave it off until your item or you've kind of been asked a question, that'd be great.
Okay, sounds.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'll call this meeting to order. This is the Finance and Government Operations Committee of City Council. Today's June 22nd, 2020. It's approximately 5:04 in the evening. And I believe we do have all committee members are present with us in Zoom. So thanks for being here. This is a remote or online meeting where all participants will be on a video or audio conference. We're holding this meeting remotely so that everyone can participate safely while we are conducting business under a public health emergency. We appreciate your patience as this is the first FGO committee meeting to be conducted this way. Members of the public will be able to speak to the committee if they have signed up for public comment per the rules published on Friday with tonight's agenda. Before each agenda item begins, members of the public will be moved from the Zoom waiting room until they are called upon to speak, at which point they will have 2 minutes to provide comment to the committee. After that, they will again be muted. Between each of tonight's agenda items, members of the public will be moved in and out of the Zoom waiting room accordingly. We will now move on to our first agenda item, item A. It is 012. And if the Zoom moderator would please move in all the members of the public who signed up to speak for this item.
1 second. Okay, I think all are in.
All right.
All right, Madam Chair,
Yeah. I don't know how to do that. Wait, yeah, I do.
okay, sorry about that.
All right. All right. I apologize for that. I just had to fix my mic. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, sorry about that, Committee Chair. Your first public speaker is Arciela Isis.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Council members. My name is Arcelia Sais, and I'm a resident of Albuquerque, and I was commenting to say that I stand in strong support of adopting the most recent building codes. In addition to reducing our energy costs through better efficiency and updating our building codes, they will also ensure that new buildings are better equipped to reduce moisture, filter and maintain indoor air quality, and insulate against extreme temperatures. And I bring this up because I'm concerned for our community members who are currently finding themselves spending a lot more time indoors and living with outdated code standards. We have wasted a decade putting this off, and our most vulnerable residents are the ones who will have to bear the worst of that burden. making sure that we are up to date with the most recent changes is the absolute bare minimum we should be doing to make sure that our communities are more resilient against these inevitable hardships that we will be facing. Because this won't be the last crisis we'll have to face, and we need to do our part to make sure that our homes, our schools, and our places of work can best protect us. For these reasons and many more, I ask that you move forward with adopting the most recent building codes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Isis. Ms. Tammy Feeblecorn, are you with us?
I am, Counselor.
Thank you.
All right. Madam Chair, members of the committee, thanks for allowing me to speak tonight on Ordinance 20-12. I am Tammy Feeblecorn with Southwest Energy Efficiency Project, and we're very glad to see you considering the adoption of the 2018 IECC, that's the International Energy Conservation Code, without weakening amendments this evening as part of the larger code update package. Albuquerque is still on the 2009 IECC, which is over a decade old. 3 code cycles have come and gone while Albuquerque did nothing to improve the quality of buildings constructed in Albuquerque. We definitely think it's time for Albuquerque to update to the 2018 IECC without weakening amendments and garner the approximately 25% energy savings for new buildings as soon as possible. We need to bring the newest in technology and advanced equipment to all the buildings constructed here to keep us up to date with the rest of the region and ensure the new buildings in Albuquerque are durable, healthy, and safe, in addition to using less energy, which is good in terms of reduced energy bills and environmental protection. We thank the counselors who have pushed this issue through numerous city council resolutions and are happy to see this finally moving forward. It's worth mentioning that this code update was first addressed by the City Council in R 1818, which was passed by Council on 6/4/18. That is over 2 years ago, and the delays with this process have been very frustrating. In the meantime, the state has published its energy code update proposal and will be acting on it early August of this year. So now is the time for Albuquerque to address this issue. Right now is the time for Albuquerque residents to get the benefits of better buildings. Right now is the time for Albuquerque to set itself on a path forward as a leader in energy conservation, not just a follower again. We ask that you support O20-12 as is tonight and move it to the full council for consideration. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Feeblecorn. Next, we have Ms. Camila Feebleman. Hello, welcome. We can't hear you though, Camila, can you?
Yes. Okay, am I unmuted?
There you are. We can hear you now.
Okay, thank you so much, Counselor and Chairwoman and members of the committee. I really appreciate the opportunity to participate remotely. I am the director of the Rio Grande chapter of the Sierra Club, which has 10,000 members around the state or more, most of whom actually are located here in Albuquerque. And I did have the opportunity to serve on the Albuquerque Code Change Committee, where we went through a report that looked at the 2009, 2015, and 2018 codes. You know, that committee was led by the planning office. However, we were never allowed to hear a summary from the preparer of the report, although then the state did bring in an expert from the national realm where these codes are considered for implementation throughout the country, who basically said, you know, 2018 is going to give you more energy savings. It's going to save people money on their electric bill, and it cleans up 2015. But weirdly, the report from our committee and the letter from several of us on the committee who really want to see Albuquerque get ahead of the game was never sent to the council. So now, you know, I think a lot of the hard work has been done by the state's CIB and their code change committee. You know, there'll be new codes in 2021, and you know, we're still on 2009. My husband is a green architect and has implemented a lot of this stuff for us at home. So we see very minimal energy bills. And he has even implemented some of this code to our existing home, which can be very helpful as well. So I think the main thing that we're asking the committee is, like, let's get Albuquerque with the program. Let's be the city that's leading this for the rest of the state, saying Albuquerque is going to do this, so it makes sense that the state's going to do it, not us sort of scrambling behind. But I did want to put this in some amount of context.
So, Ms. Feebleman, that was 2 minutes, about 15 seconds ago, but good point.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
And next we have Miss Amy Miller. Is Amy Miller with us? Okay, we'll go ahead and move on. Ms. Sanders Moore, please. I just saw you.
Thank
There you
you.
are.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, committee members and counselors. My name is Sanders Moore, and I'm the director of Policy Solutions Institute, which is a nonprofit based in Albuquerque, working with communities on energy efficiency and clean energy, among other issues. I was also on the Change Code Committee, but Ms. Feibleman did an excellent job of summarizing what that process was like, so I will focus on a few other issues. I encourage you to adopt the 2012 ordinance as it is without delays. The city of Albuquerque is currently using the 2009 IECC building codes, yet it is 2020. We are woefully behind in updating our codes, and the longer this occurs, the more difficult it will be to bring our codes up to date. This is beyond disappointing, since at one time, Albuquerque had some of the most efficient building codes in the country, if not the most efficient building codes in the country. We were a leader in a very positive field, and this leadership was taken away by the previous administration. I think we can all agree that we like to be at the top of leaderboards when it's good, and we do not like to be at the bottom of those lists on good things. So this is some place where we can strive. The 2018 IECC building codes will save building and homeowners money, as well as reduce energy consumption by approximately 25%. Our buildings last a long time, about 40 years. By requiring newly built buildings to be as efficient as possible today, it will keep costs lower for future generations. Reducing energy costs for families will help those families plan and budget better, spending their incomes on other needs. New Mexico has one of the highest energy burdens in the country, meaning low-income families spend a disproportionate amount of their income on energy costs. Again, I encourage you to adopt O2012 as it is without delays. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Diane Reese.
Hello. Oops. Hello, this is Diane Reese. Thank you for your patience. I hate that I couldn't dial in on Zoom, but I couldn't figure it out. I want to speak to you about 2012 and ask you to pass this ordinance without amendments, please. I am a military retiree and chose to live here in Albuquerque because of the environmental care and the cost of living in this area. I see us running behind everyone else with our old standards. I ask that you get up to date, improve the efficiency, not only for buildings that I might buy in the future, but also buildings that government will live in, and I want my taxpayer dollars to support the government to be a little bit lower. So thank you all. Please pass this ordinance. You've looked at it for a couple of years now. It's time to take action and do it without these amendments. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I think we have one more speaker, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. John Amundson. Do we have John Amundson?
I'm here. I just unmuted.
Oh,
Sorry.
there you are.
Wonderful.
Welcome.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Yeah, good evening, chairwomen, council members, and thanks so much for the opportunity to speak. My name is John Amundson, and I'm the state director with Environment New Mexico, representing thousands of members across the state and here in Albuquerque as well. And I'm speaking tonight on behalf of our members in strong support of Ordinance O 2012, specifically the adoption of the 2018 IECC codes, and urge you to support it without amendment. As you know from others who have spoken tonight, the city of Albuquerque is currently operating under the 2009 codes, and so this is leaving our city almost a decade behind the current best practices for energy conservation and efficiency, which in turn means that we're missing out on that opportunity to save around 25% of the energy used in newly constructed buildings, which in turn results in lower energy costs. In addition to these energy cost benefits, reducing the amount of energy that is wasted by things like leaky windows and inefficient heating and cooling systems is low-hanging, but still vitally important fruit when it comes to meeting our carbon reduction and climate goals. The city of Albuquerque has been taking the lead statewide on many environmental issues, including solar adoption, but we're lagging way behind when it comes to energy efficiency, and adopting the 2018 IECC codes will make Albuquerque a statewide leader on energy efficiency once again. I think that would be a really wonderful thing, and we urge you to adopt Ordinance O 2012 as is and move it to the full council. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. So I'm gonna go ahead and move a do pass on this. If is there a second for a do pass without rec?
Madam Chair, if I may, I was going to discuss and see, and hang on one second. Okay, there, not space bar. Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, I think that although this is probably going to be unpopular with many constituents, we're just about 1 month away from the state making their decision as far as what they're going to do, and being that we need to move forward and comply with whatever recommendation and regulations they put down. I just would hate to put the cart before the horse in this scenario, so I would move for deferral.
So, well, first of all, we did have a second for my motion. So your motion is for a deferral until when? Next meeting? Next month?
Well, you know, I guess that would be in August, right? Because we don't have one next month, or are we going to have one next month, Madam Chair?
I don't think so. So our next FGO meeting will be August 10th.
Okay,
So
and yes, I would like to move for deferral until August 10th, waiting so that we can see what the state does, even though I know that this has been long overdue and that we want to continue on and make some forward progress. I think that it's also really wise to make sure we have all the facts in place.
All right, do we have a second for the motion to defer until August 10th? I'm not hearing a second, so I'm afraid that that's not on the table to vote on. So very sorry, Counselor. So Counselor Davis, your hand is up.
Yes, Madam Chair. If we're moving to discussion or debate amongst the counselors, I'd like to add a few comments about the legislation, if that's okay.
Yes, please do.
Thanks so much. And I understand where Councilor Bassan's coming from, but precisely for that reason, I think it's important that we move forward on this. As some of our speakers noted earlier, this is a promise the administration brought in that began working with us. I know Councilor Benton's been carrying this for 3 years now, working with Planning Department and the administration on. It's something that we've worked a lot with our community on, and quite frankly, where we have the opportunity in Albuquerque to lead, we've had a good habit of doing just that. And I think it's time for us to do that. We've done our homework. We've taken community input. Certainly, we don't have to wait on the state to follow suit. And if we have a strong energy code in place here in the next few months, and the state chooses to follow, I think that's excellent. But there's no guarantee the state would do that. And so for that reason, I think we've done our homework. It's time to do it. We should move forward as packaged and as ready to go.
All right, thank you, Counselor. Counselor Benton, did you have your hand up? Did you wish to speak?
I did. Thank you, Madam Chair. And to make clear to anyone who's watching, I'm not a member of the committee, and nor am I the sponsor of this Uniform Administrative Code. That is Councilor Jones. But I was the sponsor, and I want to thank President Davis for being co-sponsor on a couple of these bills two bills that were passed. First in 2018, calling for a group of experts to discuss many of the questions that Councilor Bassan is bringing up. That was convened, but never produced a recommendation, even after I thought a very compelling presentation was made to that advisory committee by one of the top scientists from the International Code Commission. The International Code format and the entire International Code Council is a whole range of building codes that are commonly accepted throughout our country and even beyond, with regard to an attempt to standardize and to make expectations clear with regard to building codes. And a speaker referred to the time at which we had a very strong building code here in Albuquerque, and that was actually led by Mayor Chavez at the time. We did write a very robust building code, but that was challenged by, I'll just call them special interests, the air conditioning manufacturers. I'm not sure why they didn't want to sell better air conditioning equipment than they were selling, but they didn't. And they sued us, and the previous administration kind of just chose to not fight that in court. And our Albuquerque Energy Conservation Code, enacted in 2010, was repealed. But it's a long, hard road. And I look back on the days when I first came to Albuquerque as a very young man, Vista volunteer, and he came to town. And part of my reason to when I moved to Albuquerque was we were a leader in solar energy and understanding of desert climates and how we make people's houses not just affordable at first cost, but over the life of the building. And that's a place there where we often fall down. And it is hard to get a building built or remodeled. It is expensive, and it's very, very labor intensive. But when we don't consider the life cycle cost of that building, or even just the life cycle cost of one owner of that building, then we're really missing the point. And so it has been a long time. It's been a lot of ups and downs, but we were criticized when we passed that local code, just so everybody remembers if they weren't around. The city was criticized for passing our own code that wasn't part of the International Family of Building Codes, and we were criticized for not being in line with what the state was doing. Well, here we are, 10 years later, past the repeal of that code. Still sitting here talking about a code that's actually titled 2018, but we're a decade behind. So I think it's appropriate to move it forward. The amendments, local amendments can always be passed. The state will certainly pass their own local amendments, and we'll see what those look like. But for us right now, the proper thing to do to be a leader is just to pass the 2018 code as written, and we'll see what the state does and then react to that. We are a home rule municipality, and we can pass somewhat different regulations from the state, as long as we don't soften any state regulations. But I was so impressed when I saw the presentation from the lady from the International Code Council, and with her on the call was a very well-informed guy from Boulder, Colorado, from the Department of Energy. So this is not some fly-by-night code. This is a well-researched standard. And I appreciated the comments by the first speaker about the most vulnerable end up in the most, quote, affordable housing. And again, it kind of oftentimes misses the mark as to what it's going to cost them to live in that home, live in it comfortably and healthfully, and in good health, as was mentioned as well. So no reason we can't react after the state reacts and consider our own local amendments. But for now, I really encourage us to move forward and lead the way this time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And thank you, Councilor Benton. Is there anyone else who Counselor Bassan, I'm sorry. I see your hand up. Go ahead, Counselor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to ask if either Mr. Padilla or Director Williams would like to weigh in. I had it on good authority this afternoon that the administration might feel differently about a deferral.
Madam Chair, Councilor Bassan, it sounds like, or it looks like Mr. Padilla may be having some audio difficulties. The concerns have already been expressed. We are certainly cognizant of the fact that the state is also working on an energy code. And just to be consistent and compliant with that, wanted to see the state take the lead. But certainly, as Councilor Benton mentioned and several other speakers, there's no harm in us proceeding here and then making adjustments at a later time if or when the state adopts something that is inconsistent with the city of Albuquerque. We can be more strict than the state. We can't just be less strict. So we would need to monitor that from a local level to ensure that, again, we're consistent with state standards. But again, it's nothing that we couldn't address at some point in the future.
Thank you.
And Counselor Sena.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Councilor Bassan, your concern was a similar concern that I had. And I was originally thinking of supporting that as well, but after hearing that we've been so far behind for so long, that I do agree with the sentiments of my other counselors that we should just pass this now, be leaders in it, and if the state makes changes, we can make those changes to follow, whether that's stronger or mimics that same language. So I do agree, and sorry I couldn't support that, but appreciate bringing that forward.
Thank you, Counselor. Anyone else have any thoughts you'd like to share?
Madam Chair, there is an amendment that is in the iPad as well.
So are you moving that amendment?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if I needed to wait to be called upon. It's I would be happy to move the amendment.
All right. And do we
Thank
have a
you,
second
Madam
for that
Chair.
amendment?
So I'll move amendment 1, sponsored by Councilor Jones. The first thing is label the attachment to the O-2012 that is called Uniform Administrative Code 2020 Edition as Exhibit A. And the second thing is on page 3 in section 3L, edit lines 10 and 11 as follows. L is strike the 2009 New Mexico Energy Conservation Code and replace it with the 2018 International Energy Conservation Code as shown in Exhibit A. The explanation is this amendment will make clear that the update to the 2018 International Energy Conservation Code, IECC, is the version that was sent to the Council by the Planning Department. This distinction is important because the exhibit from the Planning Department contains revisions to the code that will amend the 2018 IECC to accommodate Albuquerque's climate and building needs. If this amendment isn't passed, it could be argued that this ordinance could adopt the 2018 IECC in full with no revisions.
Sorry, I should have learned that by now. Counselor Benton, did you have any comments?
Well, again, I thank you for allowing me to just speak as a non-member of this committee, but I do agree with the speakers who have said to adopt this without amendments. First of all, our last bill passed by Council R210 required an accompanied explanation of all amendments. That has not been presented by the administration. So that's an important reason to move this forward without those amendments. But I think also more importantly, understanding the state-city relationship on this process. Typically, the state has led the way. until Albuquerque in 2009 and 10 really stepped up and stepped forward. But the state, since then, in that last decade, has their discussion has lagged the one here in Albuquerque. We did start, again, as was said, actually under the Berry administration with discussions about this with the Building Safety Division, but had continued into the Miller administration with both R1818 and R2010. At this stage of the game, what we know is that the 2018 IECC is a workable, usable code. Some nuances that might be in our climate, that is the whole intention for local adoption of amendments. No reason not to be doing that. But we may as well see what the state is doing and react to that, standing on the code as written by the International Code Commission, than to try to wait around. First of all, potentially wait for who knows how long for the state. I think, I hope they move forward rapidly. But in either case, to start preparing our own builders and everyone, and with understanding that there may be some minor tweaks to things like air changes, perhaps, or I'm not even going to suggest which things, but most importantly, that we stand on something that's had a full discussion and not this partial discussion that we've had, an incomplete process of getting feedback from the community.
All right, then. I'll just add that I've been at least on the tangent of this throughout the past year or two, I believe, maybe 3. And I know that it has involved a lot of people, not only city people, city officials, but community and advocates too, that I really think that's how we get the best bill put together, is by so many people who lend their voices to it and try to make it as best as just as good as possibly can be made. So I see no other hands up. So we'll go ahead and take a roll call vote on this of the committee members. And again, the motion, seconded motion, is a do pass without recommendation. So could we call the roll, please?
This is on the amendment, right?
This is on, no, the amendment didn't. Yeah, there's no second on the amendment. Sorry. So
I don't have a motion for a do pass.
yeah, I moved to do pass, and I believe it was Counselor Davis. Did you make the second, Counselor?
I did, yes, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. So we do have a motion and a second. And are you going to call the roll then? Okay, thank you.
Counselor Sena? Just to clarify, we are voting to move a do pass without recommendation, correct?
Do pass. Either do pass or without recommendation.
Oh, okay.
You're moving a do pass.
Yes. Okay. I'm sorry. Let me clarify that. I'm sorry. All right. I apologize. Okay, let me start again. I apologize for that confusion. The motion is for a do pass, and it's seconded by Counselor Davis. Go ahead.
Counselor Sena.
Yes.
Counselor Pena.
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
No.
Counselor Davis.
Yes.
Counselor Gibson.
Yes.
That passes on a 4-1 vote.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you all the public speakers who came out tonight. So we'll move on to okay, we'll move on to item B. I'll move this for Counselor Benton. This is R216, a nuisance substandard dwelling or structure in need of abatement at 615 Arno Street, Southeast, 87102, is so ruined, damaged, and dilapidated as to be a menace to the public comfort, health, peace, or safety, and that it is to be required to be removed. I'll move it do pass.
I'll second.
A nuisance substandard dwelling. All right, so Director, I wonder, could you? Oh, okay. Let's see. Let's go to public comment first. I'm sorry, Director. So we do have, let's see, for 216, we do have 2 people signed up for public comment. So have you moved them in the room yet?
Yes,
okay.
one, Mr. Anderson's in the room. Keith Meyer has not come in yet.
Okay. So far we have Mr. Christopher Anderson, and maybe Mr. Meyer will join us in a minute here. So Mr. Anderson, did you have a comment to make, sir?
Yes, I did. I'm speaking on behalf of my wife, Lorraine Candelaria Anderson, who owns the adjacent property to the one in question. Her property is, we put a lot of money into it over the last several years, and it's a rental property. We keep all of the 3 units rented consistently. Over the years, we've had both us and our tenants have had uncountable problems with squatters and with drug use and fires going on at the said property, and we would really like to see this move forward as quickly as possible. When we were at the February committee meeting, I guess this was deferred for a month to see if a developer could buy the property from the current owner to rehab it. And at that time, we said we didn't have a problem with that if it was something that could take place quickly. Because of the pandemic, we're 5 months later, and we just like to get this going forward as quickly as possible. So we'd like to see the committee pass this and get it sent on to the council for final resolution just as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Do we have Mr. Keith Meyer available yet?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and move on to Director Williams. Sir, would you take us through this, please?
Madam Chair, thank you. Yes, for the councilors, Mr. Anderson is correct. This matter was before the committee back in February. February the 11th, I believe, was the last FGO meeting. Because of COVID, this matter has been extended. But at the February 11th meeting, there was a request from the committee that we reach out to, or make another attempt to reach out to the property owner who lives out of state. We do have contact information for that owner, but multiple attempts since that time have turned out to be fruitless. We have not received any feedback and communication from them on that. The property has been in its current condition, meaning it's substandard and uninhabitable, for almost 5 years. In the last 12 months, there have been a couple emergency calls for service. Our code enforcement division has been out multiple times to have the property cleaned and resecured because trespassers continue to get into the property, into the building. Currently, there are almost $20,000 in outstanding liens that have been filed for the board up and the cleanup work that has been necessary at the property. The site was inspected just last week by our code enforcement division, and although it is boarded and the yards are cleaned, it still is a substandard property. There are no repairs that are being done to the property. There are no permits that have been pulled. Consequently, it is still a substandard building. With that, I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, Director. Any questions for the Planning Department on this property? Councilor Bassan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have to say I was really keeping my fingers crossed this was going to go in a different direction since February, because this house just looks like it could have been something awesome. So I'm sorry to hear this report.
Yes, yes. Okay, Councilor Pena.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to say, obviously, I don't tend to vote for these, obviously, just on principle. I think I've made it part of the record in the past. You know, I just wish we had something in our system at the City of Albuquerque to help owners who find themselves in this situation be able to rehab their properties. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. And actually, we do, and we're trying to develop more, but it's never enough. Simply, I think that's the most accurate answer. So 5 years is a long time to have a vacant house that's deteriorating, and I understand that. But this is not my favorite thing to do either. However, it does give neighborhoods relief, and maybe in a way it actually even helps the owner. If a building, any building is so far along and getting worn out and dilapidated and falling down, you know, it probably needs to go, you know. So anyway, any other comments or questions? Thank you, Councilor Sena.
Thank you for that, Madam Chair. And I think I share the same sentiments as my fellow councilors. This is being my first FGO meeting, and nuisance dwelling consideration. It is actually really hard. And the whole issue is challenging. And as Councilor Bassan also shared that, yeah, this could have been an amazing space, and just sharing that this is not easy. And the process sounds like it's been going on for many years, and multiple attempts have been made to make it the beautiful space that it could have been. And so I do just want to share that this is not something easy that councilors are having to consider, even as a city going forward. And, I do share my same sentiment that I do wish that we can make it more available for property owners to have more assistance. But it sounds like we've been doing that for many years on this property in particular. So I just wanted to share that it's certainly not easy.
Thank you, Councilor Sena. Anyone else? Anyone else have any thoughts or questions? If not, we'll go ahead and do a roll call vote.
Councilor, if you mute your mic, we won't get that feedback.
Councilor Sena?
Yes.
Councilor Pena?
No.
Councilor Bassan?
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Gibson,
Yes.
that passes on a 4-1 vote.
The volume on Councilor Gibson's goes into her mic.
Okay. All right, thank you. So we'll move on now to item C. Oops. And we're moving the speakers for public comment into the room so that we can hear from them.
They're all there.
Okay, so we have 3 people, I believe, signed up to speak on R19-217. And Counselor Davis, did you want to move this?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would move a due pass on R19-217, which is a nuisance substandard dwelling at 318 Mesilla Northeast, which has been a long-standing problem for the neighborhood that is so ruined, damaged, or dilapidated as to require its removal.
Okay. So I'll go ahead and second that. And let's go ahead and hear from the public. First speaker is Mr. Charles Bennett. Can you unmute yourself and?
Looks like he's still connecting to the audio.
Oh, okay.
Why don't we go to the next speaker and we'll come back around to Mr. Bennett.
All right, Mr. Bennett's still trying to get in, so we will go then to Mr. Jim Mondlock. Mr. Mondlock. Can you unmute yourself, sir? So that we can hear you. Look at the bottom left of your screen with your mouse, with your pointer, and see if you can unmute yourself. Yeah.
Madam Chair, he can also push and hold the space bar as the entire time he speaks, and that would go ahead and temporarily unmute him.
Thank you. I didn't know that. Sir, did you hear that? Can you hold your space bar down and just keep it down while you're speaking? Could we possibly give him a call? Oh,
Who are you speaking to?
yes, sir. Go ahead. Now we can hear you.
Okay. Can you hear me now? Okay. Thank you for letting me speak today. Sorry, I'm not a good technical person. Councilor Davis, thanks for sponsoring this bill or this request. And committee members, thank you. Good evening. Director Williams, thanks for being here. Mick, nice to see you. And Charlie, we have been dealing with this property at 318 Mesilla Street Northeast for almost 30 years, and I'm getting old now, and I'd like to see a resolution before I die. But the problem is the city has spent thousands and thousands of dollars, thousands of man hours trying to clean up this property to no avail. Well, they've made progress, but the owner is just waiting in the wings to revert back to his to trash the property out again, and it's just an endless cycle. And so we are hopeful tonight that their resolution will really finally be. You will come to a final decision here at your committee to actually demolish this property and demolish the house, clean up the property, so our neighborhood will look good again. It's been a blight on our neighborhood ever since I moved here, and it's very discouraging. I mean, the city cleans it up, he trashes it again, and we need to get a final resolution. So we're asking you tonight to do the right thing and get this property cleaned up. It's not only an eyesore, it's a health hazard. He has cats over there, feral. He has a whole collection of cats. He has a dog. There's no water. There's no sewage. There's no electricity. He lives in his car. He's a very sick man, and we need to take steps to clean his property up for good. And so we ask you tonight to do the right thing, please, and finally get this property out of our neighborhood and clean it up for good. But I have a couple questions for you, if I may.
Well, right, but you know what? We only have 2-minute time period for public comment.
Okay.
But you can.
Can I take 2 minutes already?
Yeah, that was 2 minutes. It
Oh,
goes
darn.
fast, doesn't it?
Okay.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So is, I guess we have Charlie Bennett now. Are you with us, Charlie?
Charlie's, I can see him.
Yeah, I can see him. He's frozen, but we can see him. Charlie, if you can hear me, you need to unmute yourself. We aren't able to unmute you. Okay, so he's having some technical problems. Let's try our third speaker, Mr. Mick McMahon.
Hi there, folks. How are you? I'm glad to see Mr. Williams here. He and probably some other planning department members have had more history with this than anybody else in city government. My recollection is that the file in this ridiculous property is probably 3 or 4 inches thick. I'd like to see a bonfire made out of it after you all approve the destruction of this property. It's not been a useful piece of property for over 20 years. And the La Mesa Community Improvement Association has records of problems on this property going back to 1988, which I'm certain Jim Monlick can understand, since he lives directly across the street and certainly is most affected by the appearance of the property. Others have been affected who, for one reason or another, choose not to show up in public and testify simply because they're afraid of this man. He strikes heart terror in the heart of his neighbors because his behavior is so unpredictable. I urge you all to finally let this property be demolished, sow salt into the earth, if you will, to keep anything from being done except something productive by someone who would use this residential property for what it's made for. It's a piece of property that can be rehabbed. A reasonable dwelling can be built there and provide housing for someone. But in its current condition, under its current owner, it is impossible because this man has gamed the system for over 20 years to make sure that he does not take care of his property. In fact, making a pigsty out of it by keeping Vietnamese pot-bellied pigs in it for a number of years.
Yes.
Mr. Williams can attest to these and the other kinds of things. Thank you very much for your attention. I appreciate this. I'm sorry Charlie can't speak because he's.
Well, we're gonna get.
I can speak.
We're gonna get to him. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
So I think we have both Charlie and Mr. Mondock. So let's start with Charlie. Charlie Bennett.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hello? Yes, greetings, Madam Chair and councilors. I'm a resident of the neighborhood that has graced this ongoing nuisance, public safety and health since 1984, I believe. That's 318 Mesilla Northeast. Over the years, it's received almost as many court injunctions against it as it has deferrals before this body. Currently, it is home to numerous campers, feral cats that roam the neighborhood. The front yard is overgrown with saplings, spaced no farther than a foot apart, and are over 2 feet high at present time. There are 2 unregistered and dilapidated vehicles in the front driveway, and 2 more remain parked in the church parking lot adjacent to 318 Messia. The property owner, John Gallegos, does sleep in one of those vehicles. I'm just asking, please finally remove this blight from my neighborhood.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. So that's the, we did have 3 public speakers. Thank you all for your presence here and your words. Mr. Director Williams, could you describe this for us, please?
Madam Chair, thank you. Members of the committee, this is another property that was held over from the February FGO meeting. There was a request at that time that the city make one additional outreach effort to try and speak with the property owner and connect them with services. That did occur the following day on February the 12th. Members of our code enforcement division, the COAST team, or the crisis outreach team with the Albuquerque Police Department, as well as members of the Family and Community Services Department, all contacted the property owner, spent about an hour talking with him and working with him, providing him services. He indicated at that time that he was interested in doing that. He would begin the application process related to income, shelter, and medical benefits, but we have no record that took place all these months later. Just very quickly for the committee, properties that are considered to be considered to be nuisances that come through the enforcement process and ultimately end up in front of the council only occur because the property has remained substandard and uninhabitable for a continuous period of 12 months, where we have no efforts that are being made by the property owner at that time to take care of the property, and city resources are being used to board and clean up the property. So there is a significant amount of communication that takes place prior to a substandard property ever appearing on an FGO agenda. For this particular property, it has been substandard and uninhabitable for over 2 years. In the past 12 months, there have been 10 police department calls for service to this address, 1 AFR, Albuquerque Fire Rescue, call to this address. And as the speakers indicated, the yards of this property are frequently used for the storage of litter, debris, trash, that sort of thing. Currently, there are about $14,000 in existing liens against the site for the cleanup of the property. The most recent inspection of this site was conducted by code enforcement on June the 2nd. At that time, they did speak with the property owner, but he indicated that he had no plan to either repair the property or to demolish the property himself. And the site was still found to be in violation. The house appears to be full of litter and debris, as are the yards. With that, Madam Chair, I will stand for questions.
So do we have any questions for the director? Councilor Bassan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I thank you for making sure to clarify the last FGO meeting. I know Councilor Borrego was very concerned about the gentleman that she was worried he's inhabiting this dwelling, and it sounds to me from what the public comment is that he's not inhabiting the dwelling so much as maybe a vehicle that's on the property. My question is, I mean, judging by the pictures and all of the briefings and everything that we've had, this is just no way for anyone to live, including the residents around this property. But what happens to the property owner? And I don't know who answers that question, or what happens to the property owner once, and if we choose to go ahead and tear down this building.
So, Councilor Bassan, I'm thinking the same thing, and I think that that this needs to be monitored going forward, no matter how this committee votes on this particular item.
Well, and again, Madam Chair, it absolutely is no way for anyone to live, but I hate to sound so cold-hearted, I guess, but if he's in his car and then there's no house, then he's still in his car. So how can we help him to move on from this point?
Well, I think my idea would include having one of our nonprofit service providers do an intake with him, intake interview, and to monitor him through the process if this committee should vote to demolish this building and clean up all the debris. So
Thank you,
someone's
Madam Chair.
going to have to be monitoring him and
Madam Chair, I can provide some more information if it's appropriate.
all right, please do, Councilor Davis.
And I apologize, I don't want to get out of turn. I just want to address that. I think it's a really important question. I think Director Williams will back me up here and say that, and just as this was a project, this is a location that I inherited from Councilor Garduno and Mr. Moya, who inherited it from Senator Heinrich. It was the very first community visit, neighborhood visit he did as a new counselor, how all those many years ago. And so this just shows you how long it's been we've been working on it. I think Director Williams will back me up and say that we've been taking the APD's Coast unit and nonprofit providers out at each of these cleanups, including the most recent one, as well as interventions. He does have a caseworker with Coast and does have nonprofit support. But we're at a place where it's now unhealthy and unsafe for him to remain on the property. Code hallway about, correct me if I'm wrong, Brennan, 13, 14 tons of trash, old vehicles, dead animals, et cetera, from the property last time. It doesn't have water, sewer, utilities, et cetera. And so it's become not just an individual issue, but a public health hazard. And there are some civil options that are available from Coast. But our first step is to ensure that the unhealthy property no longer remains where he can use it and make it unhealthy again. And he does have a caseworker. He's not really willing to work with them yet, but there are some civil options available. Then we'll have to work through that process once we take this step. But it's a little bit of a chicken and egg. As long as he has a place that he can sort of hide out in, he doesn't feel obligated to work with those other partners. And now it's just become too unsafe.
Thank you. That makes me feel a little better. Thank you very much, both of you.
Councilor Sena, did you want to speak?
Thank you for that, Madam Chair. I just voiced my same concerns as Councilor Bassan. You know, if this gentleman does not have an address any longer, you know, what resources will he be able to have access to if that address is no longer his? Granted, he may be still living from his car, but is he able to, say, file for any documentations utilizing that address because it's still in his name? You know, Director Williams or Councilor Davis, if you can provide clarification on that.
I'll defer to the director there on some of those issues. And I just want to acknowledge and be careful. I'm not trying to sidestep. We talked about this offline with some Coast folks. There's some HIPAA issues involved here. But I've been assured that he has a good caseworker and has access to those things, but I'll defer to the director as well.
Madam Chair, Councilor Sena, I would agree with Councilor Davis. My understanding is that he does have a caseworker and that Coast, as well as the planning department, will work to provide the property owner with any sort of assistance that he would request or that he would step forward and take, you know, from the city.
Okay, thank you for that. Councilor Bassan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to say that here's hoping for a cleaner community for both the inhabitant and the neighboring houses that seem like they're much deserving of hopefully this upcoming change.
Right.
Wrong button.
Okay, I don't see any more hands raised, so we'll go ahead and do a roll call vote, if you would, please.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Pena, Counselor Pena, Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Gibson.
Yes.
That passes on a 4-0 vote.
Thank you. Thank you. So moving ahead, that was La Masia. And La Masia, rather. And now we have, I think we're on D. Is that right? Yes, on D. I'll move this for Counselor Benton. This is R2, a nuisance substandard dwelling or structure in need of abatement at 1623 Central Avenue Northwest 87104 is so ruined, damaged, and dilapidated as to be a menace to the public comfort, health, peace, or safety, and that it is to be required to be removed. We'll move a do pass on this. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you for your second. Let's see, do we have public comment for this? Yes, we do. Here we go. Mr. Gruber, is he ready to go? Okay. Mr. Gruber, oh, there, I see you on my screen. Go ahead,
I'm here.
sir.
Good evening, Madam Chair, councilors. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, fantastic. So I'm here on behalf of my client, the current property owner, Liz Lauren LLC, which is actually two gentlemen, Richard Green and Gary Bernier, who I believe may also be on the line with us. I'm not sure. We all had some difficulty getting into this evening's meeting, so I believe they're on. We last appeared before this committee in February. As the committee may recall, my clients purchased this building at the very end of 2019. This building, we recognize it's been a problem building for many, many years. My clients purchased it around, I think it was December 27th of 2019. The building actually suffered a partial structure fire about the same day. So it's looking pretty rough. But this building is actually a very beautiful historic adobe building right on Route 66. When we last appeared, we let the committee members know that my clients were in the process of seeking bids and developing plans. The pandemic, for obvious reasons, sort of set progress back by quite a bit. They have formally retained Rick Bennett, who many of you are probably familiar with. He's an architect. He's helping them to design some plans to make this building functional again, as well as Albert and Isaiah Parra, who are probably two of the best Adobe workmen in the state of New Mexico. So these gentlemen are serious about returning this building to sort of its former glory, keeping a historic Adobe asset intact and restoring it to a productive part of the neighborhood. It is taking longer than we'd hoped, than we'd expected, but we're hoping that the committee will either recommend do not pass this evening, or alternatively deferring for another period of time. I think you mentioned earlier the next meeting is August 10th. I would actually ask if the committee is able to consider a 90-day deferral so we can have something more substantial to present next time we come back.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I see Counselor Benton has his hand raised, and then we want to get to the director. Go ahead, Counselor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks once again for letting me participate. As Chad just said, this is a there are not many houses left like this, buildings like this left on Route 66. This really goes back to the Victorian era, and in the days when the famous Huning Castle was actually just practically across the street, just barely up the road from this property. And I know that it matters a lot to other investors in the area as well that this be preserved. I'm happy to hear that we have some Adobe craftsmen. I'm a fan of the New Mexico Building Code. Speaking of building codes, the New Mexico Earthen Building Code, which provides for very traditional Adobe construction. Some code. I've built under it a couple times, and it's wonderful. But it sounds like the new owner has a good team, and for now, I certainly would urge the committee to support the deferral requested.
Thank you, Counselor. Director Williams, could you describe this property or describe this case for us, please?
Madam Chair, yes, ma'am. Members of the committee, this, as Mr. Gruber mentioned, this was another case that was held over from the February 11th FGO meeting. It was reported at that time that the new owner had just purchased the property in late 2019. And the request at that time was to defer the matter so that the new owner could work with an architect and assess and figure out what their plans are for moving forward. This property has been substandard for a little over 5 years. There were multiple calls for service previously. Windows were broken. There were weeds and litter in the yard. I'm happy to report that for at least the past 12 months or so, the new owner has successfully kept the yards clean, kept the building boarded, kept trespassers out the best they could. We have no calls for service from the fire department or the police department. All of the former liens have been paid. Code enforcement was most recently out just to monitor the property at the end of May, and found that again the property was the owner was taking the steps to keep the property in minimum compliance with the applicable standards. Additionally, as Mr. Gruber explained, Mr. Bernier has been in contact with the Code Enforcement Division, keeping them apprised of what's been going on and what work he's going to be doing. Did mention that he's almost done working with his architect on plans to move forward. Consequently, the department would not be opposed to Mr. Gruber's suggestion if the committee is leaning that way to a 90-day deferral. We can assist them with permits and report back at a future date as they make their good faith efforts to bring this property back into compliance. With that, I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, Director. Do we have any questions, comments? I think we do. Yeah. Councilor Bassan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just, I am in support of the minimum of deferral for 90 days, but I'm not sure if it might even, and if the department would be comfortable even with saying that this has come, I'm so excited that this is working out well and that this is not a lost space, but I feel like there's been enough good faith effort to consider removing this from the nuisance list altogether.
Okay, thank you, Counselor. We do have, I believe, one of the owners. We think this might be Mr. Bernier. Are you with us, sir?
There, can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Okay, I appreciate the opportunity to address the council.
And
Yes,
please tell us your name, sir.
I'm sorry?
Please tell us your name.
Gary Bernier, managing member of Liz Lauren LLC.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, we bought this property in December. I can tell you that it was a long process. We had to straighten out some issues with title. It took us over 2 years to do that. And unfortunately, the day that we bought it, we had a fire in the property in the morning. And so we are moving forward. We have engaged Rick Bennett. He's our architect. We've also engaged Albert Parra. We're really excited to have Albert on our team. And we're technically meeting the structural engineer tomorrow morning. This has been scheduled for a while to design the structural so that we can turn it over to Rick Bennett. The property was built in 1904. It's part of the original, one of the original properties that was built for the Garcia family that is prominent in that area. And we would just hate to see the building tore down. It is solid, solid, solid as well as far as the adobe is. I can also say that, you know, Liz Lauren, and you can check the record. We have gone back and we have cleaned up multiple properties. We just took one off the substandard list at 3911 Silver, Unit H. We took off 3212 Madeira Northeast. We've requested removal of 1211 Walter Southeast. And we're in the process of, we should have 5804 Glenda Northwest, all removed off of the substandard list. So we've got a history of doing that. I've got one other one here. It's not under Liz Lauren, it's under another LLC that I own. It's 5225 Cherokee Northeast. These are all within the past, since November, are going to be removed from the substandard, beautifying Albuquerque, helping neighborhoods. And so we really intend to do this to 1623. It's just that we've got onto this list here, and now we've got to go through this, and hopefully we can get this thing moving and get it cleaned up.
Thank you, sir, for that. So there was the suggestion of a 90-day deferral. Would that give you some time to make some headway on this property, sir?
Yes, it would. I mean, it would. So 90 days, we're probably just going to be able to get the engineering completed and the architecture, and Albert Parra is going to begin the design. The property itself lends itself to commercial or residential, and probably is going to be developed into a commercial area. So as far as the finishes on the inside and what will ultimately be used for that, that is a little further down the road. So we're just going to get the property under control, fix the adobe, fix the stucco on the outside, address some of the window issues, and then sit back and make a determination of what it ultimately can be used for. Because if it goes commercial, then we have a commercial grade on the engine, on the electrical, on the plumbing, et cetera, et cetera. If it goes back to residential, then we're under residential code. But ultimately, I believe it probably will go towards an office or some source of use like that.
Thank you, sir. So, Councilor Bassan, did I hear? Were you making a motion?
Yeah. Yes, Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to defer for 90 days.
Okay, do we have a second for that? Councilor Sen, is that a second? Thank you. So we do have a motion and a second for a 90-day deferral. If there are no other comments on this, we'll go ahead and take a roll call vote. And I don't see any hands up. So, Ms. Hinojos, would you?
Councillor Sena?
Yes.
Councillor Pena? Councillor Pena? Councillor Bassan?
Yes.
Councillor Davis?
Yes.
Councillor Gibson?
Yes.
That passes on a 4-0 vote.
Thank you. Thank you. So I believe that is Oh, there's one more. Don't want to end this too soon. So this is item E, and I will move this for Counselor Borrego. This is R18, a nuisance substandard dwelling or structure in need of abatement at 5609 Everett Road, Northwest, 87120, is so ruined, damaged, and dilapidated as to be a menace to the public comfort, health, peace, or safety, and that it is to be required to be removed. I'll go ahead and move a do pass on this. Is there a second for my motion? Okay, Counselor Bassan, thank you for the second. Well, let's go ahead and go to public comment. Oh, I don't have anybody signed up for public comment on this. Any questions for staff? Yes, Counselor Sena.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this property is actually located in my district, and Councilor Borrego carried this since I was not here yet, back in February. I do know I would like to talk to Director Williams because from my understanding, there was a reasonable effort. I'm a little disappointed because the owner did state that she would be on our meeting today to provide comment. That I do know that there has been some issues with this property, and would just like to talk to Director Williams. What kind of efforts have been made? I was given a brief updating. You know, I know that there has been some service calls to this property, and that it's been sitting in this condition for 3 years. So just would like to talk to Director Williams as to what other efforts have been made.
Madam Chair, Councilor Sena, thank you. Yes, ma'am, you're correct that this property has been a code enforcement matter for 3 years now. Originally in 2017, when the division received complaints about the property, they found that it had broken doors and windows. It was basically open to trespassers. It was unsecured. Consequently, it was a nuisance not only to the neighborhood, but it was uninhabitable based on its current condition. In the past 12 months, there have been 4 police department calls for service to this address. Code enforcement has also been out multiple times to ensure that the structure remained boarded and secured, as well as the yards needed to be cleaned multiple times. Consequently, there are about $10,000 worth of liens against the property as of the beginning of this month for those efforts that have been undertaken by the city. The last inspection of the property was conducted about a week ago. The division found that the violations that were first noted continued to be on the property. There had been no repair or remodeling work that had been done to the site. Consequently, it remained substandard and was still the responsibility of the city of Albuquerque to keep boarded and keep clean. Like you, my understanding was that one of the owners would be participating in the meeting this afternoon, but I am not seeing them and don't know that they're there. They indicated, at least when they spoke to code enforcement today, that they would participate in the meeting, but they had no change or no options for bringing the property up to code at this point. With that, Madam Chair, I'll stand for any questions. Any other questions?
Thank you, Director. Actually, we've done a little bit of detective work, and that person may be with us, and we just haven't been able to identify that person.
Can you hear me?
Yes. What is your name, please? Hello? Could you tell us your name, please? We hear you, or we were hearing you. Is your number 433-3314?
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes. What is your name, please?
Okay, my name is Lucy Kowalczyk,
Okay.
and I'm the owner of the property along with my 2 daughters. And the reason why the property, I haven't done anything to the property is because when the city of Albuquerque came out and first boarded up the property, it was due to the fact that I had no running water because my neighbor had was tapping into my water. He put a hole in my fence and he made my water bill go up to $900. And then when I found out what he was doing, I disconnected his hose and I couldn't afford the water bill. So the city of Albuquerque, when the code enforcement came out, they told me that I had till the end of the day to pay my water bill. And my water bill was up to like $1,000, $900 and some dollars. And I went and got assistance from some of the Albuquerque participants, like the Salvation Army and all that. They helped me in the churches. And then I put in my part, and then I was still lacking like about $300 to $400, and it was the end of the day, so they went ahead and boarded my house. And I did try, it's not like I didn't try, but they boarded it. Okay, so that was it. That was done, and then about 2 weeks later, I was trying to, get some work done on the house, and I have a neighbor across the street who called the police because I was there at the house. I got arrested for trespassing, and every time I tried to call the city, it's just a total lack of communications on from my understanding, because every time they have come out to check on the property, I tell them, I've been trying to reach you guys because I have a realtor that is interested. I have some people that are interested in buying the property, buying the house. And not only that, before I've had people that are interested in buying the house, I was wanting to fix the house. And after I got arrested, I didn't want to go in the house unless I had permission, and that's the way it's been through the whole year. I called the number on the board out there on the front of the front door numerous times, thousands of times, and they never returned my call, so I could enter the house and do some work on it. And from my understanding is the city workers, it's a Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 job, they want to go home. They don't want to return calls because I have tried to call numerous times, and when they do come out to inspect the property, I let them know that I've been trying to call them, and I need, my realtor has to do a walkthrough to see, if because I have some people that want to buy the house as is, and then they're gonna fix it, and they're gonna pay pay up the liens and the taxes and everything, and I'll get the house sold, But if I have another option, I would like to keep my home because I had it custom built in 1998. There was absolutely nothing wrong with this house. It's just neighbors complaining. Lady across the street, Miss Baca, I found out through all the other neighbors that her son or her grandson wants to buy the property. That's why they're constantly calling and complaining about my property. But I live next door in my mother's house while I'm trying to settle this and trying to find out how I can get back into my house, or if I can get permission from you people so I can go into the house and start fixing it up, and or else the other option, selling the place. But I do need permission, and
All right.
I talked
Let's
to
see what we can do. I'm
and
sorry.
Chris finally gave an answer after all this time. He said that all this time that I was able to go into the house between 8 and 5 Monday through Friday.
Ma'am. Thank you.
I barely found that out today.
Ma'am, can you hear me? Thank you so much. So I think we got a pretty good idea of your frustration, and let me ask Director Williams the best way to proceed with this. Okay, just stay with us for one moment. Director, can you give us some direction here?
Madam Chair, yes, ma'am, happy to do so. Encouraged with the communication. My understanding is that code enforcement spoke to Ms. Kowalczyk this morning, so we've got a contact number for her. I've copied down her phone number here as well, so I've got a copy of that. I can pass that along to our code enforcement division and ensure that they get back with her and explain to her exactly what needs to be done. So we could, if the committee is willing, we could defer this matter for, say, 60 days give us some time to communicate and work together. Compliance is always the ultimate goal in these sorts of situations. So if we can come up with a workable plan, the department would be happy to do that and then report back to the committee at a future date.
I will move a 60-day deferral. Do I have a second on that? Counselor Sena has seconded that. That, as the director said, that hopefully will give 2 months for the property owner and for the planning department, zoning enforcement, code enforcement to come up with some plan and get some real work done. Thank you so much, Director. Appreciate your help with these. So, there any final comments on that? If not, we will go to a roll call vote. Okay, Ms. Hinojosa?
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Pena, Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Gibson.
Yes.
That passes on a 4-0 vote.
Very good, thank you. And that takes care of our agenda. There's no other business before this committee. So good night, we'll adjourn, and we'll see you in August. Thank you.
All right, good job.
Thank you.